Sifter for the ear.
News, interviews, reviews, cinema, TV, streaming. Action.
Hi y'all, this is Jerry Williams, aka TV Jerry. If you're into AI, there's a new event coming to town. Human Storytelling and the Creative Process in the AI World is a long title and is being presented as part of the RVA Faith and Film Forum and the Riff Arts Institute. Speakers include Virginia Film Office Director Andy Edmonds, who's been on the show many times as a guest, Justin Lauder, a local attorney specializing in intellectual property and a member of the bands Flashlight Tag and Silly Bus, William Willis, chair of the board of AI Ready RVA, and Jenna Lambert, director of content for Lighthouse XR, which supports clinical recovery. Mark Lambert, who's also a partner, talked about it on my show in May. This event is Friday, December 13th at In Your Ear Studios. You may have heard Carlos and Bruce on my show recently. And tickets are free, including a light breakfast, because it's at 8 a.m. I'll include a link to the tickets on the webpage for this show at tvjerry.com.
But we can't use fire. And so when you look at that scene and you see the fire twirling, the actual fire was in post-production as a visual effect.
That was David Noble talking about one of the visual effects in his film, The Secret Within the Sphere. David has made his career in the Army, but he's also been writing and directing shorts and feature films. His latest was called The Secret Within the Sphere, a sort of steampunk sci-fi story, but the distributor changed the name to Future War. We'll talk about making the film, changing the name, and more.
Sifter Review of the Week.
A Man on the Inside. On Netflix, Michael Schur is known for Brooklyn Nine-Nine and The Good Place, both of which I love, so I was excited about this new show. Ted Danson stars as a retired widower who goes undercover in a nursing home to catch a thief. There's lots of built-in potential for comedy, but it never materializes. Instead of mining for laughs, every episode introduces another resident who has issues that are common for seniors, and often sad. Danson is charmingly bumbly. The rest of the cast could have been stocked with quirky seniors, but it isn't. As a comedy, this series is disappointing. It tries so hard to be heartwarming and emotionally manipulative that it lost any potential for fun. My review is based on 5 out of 8 episodes, including the last one, so I could find out who done it. I gave A Man on the Inside 1.5 out of 5 stars. David Noble, thanks for coming on to Sifter for the Ear to talk about your movie Secret Within the Sphere.
No, thanks for having me.
So first of all, what is your background? How did you get into making movies?
I am a communications major from the University of Tampa, but that was back in the late 90s. Like with many people, my job ended up taking me in different directions. But about 15 years ago, I decided to kind of get back into the creative mindset and started making short films. And then that evolved into the first attempt of a feature film called Zydeco. And that was based on where I was located at that time in central Louisiana. Since then, as I moved to different locations, the backdrops would kind of be an inspiration for the type of film that I would like to create. And then, eventually the middle of Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania, led to a more historical backdrop that allowed me to make my attempt of a science fiction steampunk movie known as Secret Within the Sphere.
I was going to say, well, wait a minute, that's kind of in the futuristic sci-fi world, so it's not really in a place, but you're right, and we'll get to that. You do have locations. I discovered those locations all over Philadelphia, so that was cool. What's the basic story, and what was your inspiration for it?
So the basic story is about an airship captain who is hired by royalty to recover or steal, in a different sense, this historical artifact that turns out to be an object of great power. So it just takes elements of common curiosities of what is the steampunk culture and kind of weaves it into this fictional narrative, this high adventure, the science fiction, action and intrigue in that science fiction backdrop.
But you're not a steampunk type yourself. You're not into the movement. You just are observing it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say I'm more of an observer. I'm more steampunk curious than anything else. And so I'm more of the observer, but really appreciated, the aesthetics of it and how the Pennsylvania backdrop would lend to that being the avenue in which I'd want to do a science fiction tale.
And you shot this I believe I read in 2019.
Yes, it was about 5 years ago. I was working in Pennsylvania at the time.
You're in Virginia now.
I'm in Virginia now, that's correct. But when I was in Pennsylvania, the backdrop, between everything from the 1700s, from Philadelphia out west into Cumberland County, I mean, there was a lot of mansions and some apocalyptic environments. And when you look at the variety of villages or townships or communities, there was a whole range of opportunity where you can have the ideal community and you could have the dystopian community, and it really led to a whole collection of avenues in which you could be creative and try to create many facets of steampunk science fiction.
And what do you do for a living?
I am in the U.S. Army by trade. I am in the military, but I am months away from retiring.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've been committed for 3 decades now. Every 2 to 3 years, I'm able to relocate to a new location.
That explains why you've been moving around so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but on the plus side, it's job security, it's a necessity, it's selfless service. I mean, it's a whole bunch of components, but I'm on the verge of about to retire, and then, whatever that next chapter is. It's allowed me to go to a variety of locales from which being able to make different independent movies.
So now this movie has a lot of visual effects and animation. Since it was made a few years ago, I don't know if you were using AI at all, but talk a little bit about the visual effects for this, because there's a lot of them.
Production completed in the summer of 2019. Really didn't use AI. I don't think I have embraced AI until probably within the last 12 months. But even then, AI kind of takes away from the more traditional approaches of being creative. And there's kind of a disdain about using AI as an avenue to create, because it's almost, in some eyes, it's a cheat. And so
Right.
you kind of want to avoid that. You want to be able to work with others. You want to work with your hands. You want to work with other more traditional systems. So when the filming was complete in 2019, we were on the precipice of the COVID era.
Right.
And so I actually had about an 18-month kind of pause on anything. We were in a state of fluctuation, and other things were more important. At some point, as a new sense of normal was coming about, was able to look into the post-production work, editing, and bringing in the sound effects and the visual effects. It was with a global team of, well, I say team, but it was a global networking of capable VFX and graphics designers that I was able to coordinate and hire freelance through this website called Fever. I had I would say probably about 50 visual effects shots of different types, like spaceships or explosions or, other types of effects. So whether it was a person in New Zealand or Sri Lanka or in Japan or in Costa Rica, I mapped it out. It was probably about 14 different countries that we ended up, through Fever. And again, it's visual effects on a budget. If you were to compare it to any movie, like a Marvel movie or a Star Wars or Star Trek or anything, it's not that, because I don't have millions. I'm dealing in thousands. And so I think it does tell a compelling story, and the visual effects are definitely additive to it.
What was the biggest challenge in creating Secret within the sphere?
So the biggest challenge was that when you're working in a science fiction environment, you really cannot use a whole lot real world current anything. I mean, you could have the people, you might have some of the locations, but the costumes and the props and any number of elements have to be created from scratch. And so the wardrobe and the weapons and the different types of items that were used in any scene, it had to have zero sense of 21st century normal living. And so everything had to be meticulous in terms of making sure that it was accommodating to a steampunk environment.
It's interesting you mentioned location. Let's talk about those. I went and looked up some of those, because in your credits you give thanks to Adeline's Mansion, Cosmic Cutter, Strasbourg Market, and the train station. So there's some pretty amazing places. So did you find these locations and say, let me write around that? Or did you write it and then say, let me find a place to make this work?
We found mansions, and we found industrial parks, and we found this railroad museum that we were able to use for so many components. So like, for example, We filmed in Philadelphia proper along the ports where the USS Olympia was, the one that kind of lent to actual backdrop for the actual airship, the cosmic cutter in the movie.
And I noticed in there at one point, now this was shot a while ago, there was a Ukrainian flag.
If I remember correctly, that was 2019. So that's just an odd coincidence.
Okay, I
That's just a
thought
coincidence with, no, that's not a subliminal support
political
to
message,
any
right,
particular.
And there's a fire twirler? Was that somebody you knew, or was that written and then you found the fire twirler?
We filmed at this place called Glen Allen Mill, and we really created a steampunk nightclub within this old mill. And the DP said, it'd be cool if we had like a pseudo stage. And I know a person who does twirling, the fire twirling. And I was like, okay, but we can't use fire. And so when you look at that scene and you see the fire twirling, the actual fire was in post-production as a visual effect. When we filmed that scene, there was no fire involved because I wasn't going to inadvertently burn down a historical landmark like the Glen Allen Mill.
We've been talking about Secret Within the Sphere, but I know the title got changed. How did that happen?
One of the byproducts of not being able to totally control your product, when you have creative control, it's really you're kind of a mother hen, and you really want to see everything be in the exact vision in the exact way. But it's not so much expectation management as it is compromising to achieve some of your goals. And for Secret Within a Sphere, one of the biggest things that I try to do new that I hadn't done in previous projects was work with a distribution company that would be able to get it out on a global scale. And so I was working with a company called Summerhill Films. Technically, I still am. But then once it's packaged for release, they'll take it and start going through global distribution markets. And so Secret Within a Sphere, as it's known by that title, is in England market, it's in an African market, it's in an Asian market, and it's going into some other markets. However, in the US market, with the company that they joined with, Wild Eye, they rebranded it. And so in the US, anyone who's listening to this that would listen, you would think through this entire conversation is like, oh, I'll look for Secret Within a Sphere. The problem is they rebranded it and called the movie Future War.
Future War.
Future War, yes.
Okay.
Fortunately, there's been enough internet chatter and enough internet residue that if you Google Secret Within the Sphere, you'll eventually get to Apple TV or Amazon or Fandango or Google Play or even the YouTube paid channels. But when you get to those, you'll probably say, hey, this is called Future War. They know more than I do. And I'm looking forward to that first residual check to see if it actually worked. But I was hesitant to change the branding and the look from Secret Within the Sphere to Future War. But I think in the next 3 months, when the quarterlies start coming back, I'll see whether or not they made the right call, or did I, am I going to be a disgruntled disgruntled, coworker on this? I did not appreciate having the title change to Future War and the branding change from what I had from a steampunk look to the direction they decided to take to make it more broadly appeasing or broadly eye-catching to kind of click in and buy, to the point where it's almost, it could be considered misleading. But the actual movie is the movie. It's that branding that gets you to the movie to watch it. That some would consider misleading.
Well, I'll have to try to get both of the posters on the webpage just so people can see the difference. But actually, and frankly, for me, Future War is a much better title. That tells me a lot more than Secret Within a Sphere in terms of, I can expect, Terminator's the first thing that comes to mind, of course, but it's a totally different movie. But to me, that works. The movie's already up and available for people to watch, and I'll include a link to those different links on the webpage for the show. You said you're going to concentrate on writing books. Are you done with movies for now? There's not a what's next?
So I am done for making movies for now. I'm helping with a production in Columbus, Ohio called The Thin Blue Line. And so working as an advisor and like an associate producer for that. Also helping with a kind of like a Blade Runner type science fiction film out of Albuquerque, New Mexico called Arcade. I've done a couple of short films here in the Virginia area because a full-on feature film production I have typically found can consume 2 or 3 years.
Sure, yeah.
Nights and weekends. I've shifted over to taking my screenplays and transferring them into novel form. And so over the last year and a half, I have taken this project, Secret Within the Sphere, and two of my other projects and an original story, and I've turned them into ebooks and paperback novelizations.
So, one question I always like to ask everybody when you're not working on your movies or working on your heavy bag behind you there, what do you like to watch?
So I am a pop culture aficionado, to be sure. I do embrace the between the comedies. So I'm watching through Big Bang Theory. I'm going through that series again. I'm going through Breaking Bad right now. I might revisit Marvel movies, or, I typically stay away from going to the movie theaters because a few weeks later they'll be out on streaming.
Oh, that's terrible. I hate hearing you say that. I've heard so many people in discussions about the failure of cinema. And that's the problem. People say, well, I'll just wait 3 weeks. It'll be on streaming. So, yeah, that's contributing to the downfall of the movie theater experience. But I hear you.
In the last few months, the big blockbusters, The Fall Guy, Deadpool, Trap, I'm probably averaging about once a month. I actually go to the movie theater because I want that blockbuster experience that, you don't have at home.
Good.
And so it's not like I've totally turned away from the theater experience. It's just I've been more selective, not to totally discard that experience by any means.
Is this your first time to spend time in Virginia? And if so, how do you like Virginia?
So this is my first time living in Virginia. I mean, I've had trips to DC and I've like toured the mall and the Smithsonian.
Sure, right.
It's great because there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of history, exposed to a lot of different international communities that you wouldn't have otherwise seen in some of the smaller towns.
David, it's been fascinating to hear about your experiences through this, and good luck with getting those residual checks.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
That was writer-director David Noble, who has made his career in the Army, but has also made several films. The latest was called The Secret Within the Sphere, but the distributor changed the name to Future War. I'll have both posters plus a link to the film on the webpage for the show at tvjerry.com.
Coming soon. In theaters.
Since it's Thanksgiving weekend, there are not a lot of new movies opening. But there is Moana 2, the sequel to this animated musical, back from Disney with music by Lin-Manuel Miranda. The original was the most streamed movie of 2023, which is interesting because it was released in 2016. Maria. This film takes place in the final years of opera superstar Maria Callas, as played by Angelina Jolie.
TV and streaming.
The Agency on Showtime. Michael Fassbender plays a covert CIA agent who's ordered to abandon his undercover life and return to London. But his personal life causes conflict. Also starring Richard Gere, Jeffrey Wright, and Jodie Turner-Smith. The Madness on Netflix. Coleman Domingo stars in this series as a media pundit who stumbles across a murder in the mountains and must fight for his own innocence. Senna on Netflix. This fictional series is based on the life of the Brazilian racing legend who won Formula One 3 times. Making Manson on Peacock, a documentary series featuring 20 years of Charlie Manson's unheard prison conversations. Next week, we'll meet a Theater VCU graduate who went on to be in 2 movies from writer-director Junie Smith. This is Jerry Williams. Thanks for listening.
For more Sifter, including literally thousands of reviews,
Visit tvjerry.com.
That's a wrap.